So I move on to my second point on scams and scam-related offences. And I start with the following premise, that scams are a national law and order priority like drugs. Scams are operated in a way basically like drugs are. Scams are perpetrated by organized crime syndicates like drugs. And scams are masterminded and commandeered remotely from overseas, with the most downstream part of the production chain of criminal activities sited onshore in Singapore, just like drugs are. Scams cause immense harm to society, just like drugs. If drugs destroy lives, scams destroy life savings. Scams harm both the young and old. And because scammers often impersonate government agencies, scams can also erode the trust of our society at large in our key institutions like the police, ICA, and so on. In other words, scams do not just affect victims, they impact the whole of society. Our key institutions have to react, put up defenses, and these defenses come at a cost. So scams extract a cost on the whole of our society every day. Scams cause immense harm to our society just like drugs, and so our criminal laws should deal with scams just like they deal with drugs. I suggest that the penalties for scams and scam-related offences should be brought more in line with those for drug-related offences at 3 levels. At the first level, the scammers. In other words, the masterminds, the key operators, the most culpable, those at the highest level in the chain. Scammers manufacture schemes on an industrial level to cheat victims of their life savings. In my mind, scammers are therefore no less harmful to our society than manufacturers of controlled Class A drugs. The amendments before us today introduce mandatory caning for scammers, minimum 6 strokes, which I fully support. But the law also provides for maximum imprisonment of only 10 years for scammers. I'd like to suggest much stiffer penalties, a minimum of 6 strokes and 10 years, and a maximum of 15 strokes and 30 years or life imprisonment for scammers, to bring these penalties in line with those for illegal manufacturers of controlled Class A drugs, including new psychoactive substances. I will stop short of calling for capital punishment for the most egregious scammers, which should be in line with the penalty for manufacturers of specific Class A drugs, like morphine, cocaine, and meth. Now, we know the scammers, these masterminds and key operators, are mostly based overseas, just like the masterminds and key manufacturers of illicit drugs. But having very stiff penalties for scammers is an important and necessary marker, in my view. So the second level, members and recruiters of scam syndicates. Now, many of these members and recruiters of scam syndicates are based in or come through Singapore, unlike the scammers. If scammers are as harmful to our society as manufacturers of Class A drugs, in my mind, scam syndicate members and recruiters are as harmful as traffickers of Class A drugs. Now, the amendments before us today introduce, again, mandatory caning for such scam syndicate members and recruiters, minimum 6 strokes, but the law also provides for maximum imprisonment of only 5 years. So for scam syndicate members and recruiters, I'd like to suggest much stiffer penalties. Again, a minimum of 6 strokes and 5 years, and a maximum of 15 strokes and 20 years, to bring these penalties in line with those for traffickers of Class A drugs in most instances. So the third level, scam mules who enable scammers by laundering scam proceeds, providing SIM cards, and or providing SingPass credentials. To my mind, these are the lowest levels of the scam crime production chain. Yes, they do harm, they have culpability, but they are the lowest levels. I will peg them closer to traffickers of Class C drugs. And therefore, in my view, the penalties introduced by the amendments before us today for scam mules appear somewhat disproportionately harsh compared to the penalties being introduced for scammers and scam syndicate members and recruiters higher up the scam crime chain. For example, if the bill today is passed, a mule who provides accounts or arrangements to launder scam proceeds in particular will face discretionary caning of up to 12 strokes and also maximum imprisonment of 10 years compared to, as I said before, maximum imprisonment of 5 years for being a scam syndicate member or recruiter. So I suggest more proportionate penalties for all types of scam mules. Discretionary caning with a maximum of 6 strokes instead of 12, and maximum imprisonment of 5 years. But also, I like to suggest a minimum of 2 years to bring these penalties more in line with those for trafficking Class C drugs. I believe these suggested penalties, especially the minimum imprisonment of 2 years, will sufficiently deter specific offenders and would-be offenders from offending in future. So notwithstanding the above suggestions, I support the bill.